On Christmas morning, my son unwrapped a single sock while his cousin screamed with joy over their new iPhones. I watched him smile soft and unbothered as he folded the sock gently in his lap. My sister leaned across the room and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Well, that's all his mom can afford." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they weren't true. I work 2 jobs and I'm barely keeping us afloat. But because she said it in front of him like he was invisible, like his feelings didn't matter. My heart cracked in my chest as I watched his eyes flick toward me, searching for a reaction I didn't want him to see. I pulled him into my arms and held him tight, trying to shield him from the weight of her words. I whispered that I loved him, that he was the best gift I'd ever been given. He didn't say anything. He just nodded against my shoulder, calm and quiet, like he understood something the others never would. Then, without a word, he stood up and walked back to the tree. Everyone watched him, confused. He reached behind the bottom row of boxes and pulled out an envelope with the word mom written in blue marker. He turned to me, his voice steady, and said, "I saved up to give this to Mom. She deserves it more than anyone." No one could speak. I've never been one to expect much from Christmas. Growing up, it was always a little chaotic in our house. My mom trying to stretch every dollar, my dad working late shifts to cover the extra hours. But somehow there was still magic. Even if the tree leaned a little too far to the left and the lights didn't match, we always made it feel special. I tried to carry that same spirit into my life with Micah. He's 10 now, and in those 10 years, I've done everything I could to give him what he needs. I work the early morning shift at Dee's Diner, where I pour coffee for half-asleep commuters and try to smile like I'm not already thinking about the second job. After that, I clean offices downtown until about 9 at night. Most days, I get home after he's already brushed his teeth and tucked himself in. He leaves me sticky note drawings on the fridge. Little superheroes, hearts, "I love you, Mom," and I carry them around like armor. Micah's always been different. He's thoughtful in ways that make you pause. He doesn't throw tantrums when I can't afford something. He doesn't complain when dinner is grilled cheese again. He doesn't ask for more than he knows I can give. He just accepts with this kind of quiet grace that both humbles and haunts me. We live in a small apartment with mismatched furniture and thrifted curtains, but to us, it's home. On the wall above the couch, he helped me tape up all his school awards. Perfect attendance, most improved reader, a handwritten best smile certificate from his 3rd grade teacher. That wall means more to me than any Christmas tree packed with gifts ever could. Still, I wanted this year to feel a little brighter for him. I'd been putting away whatever coins I could in a glass jar we kept in the kitchen cabinet. Sometimes I'd add my tip money, sometimes just change from a grocery run. But the week before Christmas, the car battery died and wiped out everything we had saved. I stood in the parking lot of AutoZone with tears freezing on my cheeks, staring at the receipt like it had stolen something sacred from me. So, I went back to the beginning. I had $5 left after bills. So, I walked into the dollar store and bought the brightest pair of socks I could find, red with little cartoon reindeer flying across them. I wrapped them in leftover birthday paper and tied it with yarn. Then I sat in the kitchen that night, holding that tiny package, wondering if it would be enough. Micah came in while I was staring at it. "You okay, Mom?" he asked. I smiled like it didn't ache. Just thinking, you don't have to worry. Christmas doesn't have to be big. You always make it special. That's the kind of kid Micah is. On Christmas morning, we got dressed in our best. Him in a sweater to sizes too big, me and a scarf I found on a clearance rack. We took the bus out to my sister Zara's house. She married well. Her husband runs a tech firm and their home feels like something out of a catalog. White walls, floor-length windows, sleek furniture no one's allowed to touch. Every year she invites the family over. Our mom, our uncle Devin, cousins, neighbors. It's more of a show than a celebration. But I go because Micah deserves to be surrounded by people, even if they don't always understand him. As we stepped into her house that morning, the smell of cinnamon rolls and pine hit me like a memory I hadn't lived. Her tree was massive, glittering, with perfectly arranged ornaments, and underneath it sat a mountain of gifts stacked so high they looked like a second tree. Micah's eyes lit up when he saw the decorations, but he didn't run toward the presents like the other kids. He just stood next to me quietly, taking it all in. Zara greeted us with a stiff hug. "You made it," she said, her eyes flicking down to Micah's hand-knit hat. "You look cozy." I smiled. choosing not to respond. The kids were already tearing into gifts when we settled onto the couch. Micah sat beside me, holding the tiny wrapped socks like they were something precious. I watched as one of Zara's twins screamed with joy over the new iPhone she'd unwrapped, while the other danced around with brand new AirPods in his ears. They didn't even look at Micah. No one did except me because I knew what was coming. I just didn't know how much it would change everything. Micah waited patiently, sitting cross-legged on the floor while chaos erupted around him. Wrapping paper flew like confetti. Screams of excitement echoed off Zara's vaulted ceilings. Phones, tablets, designer sneakers. Her kids tore through the mountain of gifts like they were racing each other, never pausing to even read the tags. Their names were printed in bold metallic ink. Mine, of course, was written in pen on a small envelope tucked toward the back of the tree. I held Micah's gift in my hands, the reindeer socks wrapped as neatly as I could manage with a scrap of yarn tied in a crooked bow. I glanced at him. He was smiling, not the fake kind, the soft, real one he gives when he knows I'm watching. I leaned down and whispered, "Do you want to open it now?" He nodded, careful and quiet. He didn't rush. He pulled the yarn like it was something sacred, unfolding the paper with gentle fingers. When he saw what was inside, he didn't react with surprise or disappointment. Just a warm, steady grin. "Thanks, Mom. These are cool." That's all he said. And that should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Zara was pouring mimosas behind the kitchen island when she caught a glimpse of what he was holding. Her voice rang out, light and sharp like glass. "Oh wow, is that a sock?" Everyone turned. Zara stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against the marble. She wasn't even trying to whisper. "Well," she said with a little shrug and a smirk, "that's all his mom can afford, I guess." A few people laugh. Kind of laugh people do when they're not sure if it's okay to laugh, but they do it anyway. My mother looked down into her cup. My uncle cleared his throat and shifted in his seat. No one said anything. Not really. No one stepped in. I felt it like a wave crashing over me. Shame, heat, humiliation. My stomach twisted, my throat tightened, and Micah just sat there holding the sock in his lap like he didn't even hear her. But I knew he had. His shoulders stiffened just a little, his mouth pressed into a thin line. He blinked slowly like he was trying not to react. I moved to him, wrapped my arms around his small frame, and pulled him close. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice cracking. "You deserve so much more." He didn't answer at first. He just leaned into me, his head resting against my chest. The whole room carried on, the laughter fading into chatter, paper rustling again, boxes being opened, like it had never happened. Like the moment wasn't worth remembering. But I remembered. I would remember every second of it. Zara had always been this way, even as kids. Competitive, critical, cruel in the kind of way that hides behind a smile. When her life turned out perfect, or at least looked perfect, she made sure the rest of us knew where we ranked. I stayed quiet because I thought it was better that way. I thought if I didn't rise to it, she'd eventually stop. But today was different. Today, she humiliated my son. She turned his kindness, his grace into something small, something laughable. And I felt something shift in me. Micah pulled away from the hug. He stood up slowly, still holding the sock, then looked at me with eyes older than they should have been. He gave me the smallest nod like he was telling me not to worry, and walked across the room toward the tree. At first, no one noticed. He reached toward the back of the tree behind all the big boxes and glittery bags and pulled out a plain white envelope. He held it in both hands as he turned around. I watched Zara watching him, that same half smile on her face like she thought he was about to give someone a drawing or say something precocious. But there was nothing childish in his expression. He walked back over to me, placed the envelope in my lap, and said it clearly for everyone to hear. "I saved up to give this to Mom. She deserves it more than anyone." And just like that, the room went completely silent. Zara's smile disappeared. The only sound was the crinkle of paper beneath someone's foot. Every head turned to us. Every eye landed on him. Micah stood there, calm, proud, and absolutely sure of what he had done. I hadn't even opened the envelope yet, and still, I could feel it. Something had shifted. The story wasn't about the sock anymore. It never really was. I held the envelope in my hands like it might disappear if I moved too fast. Micah stood in front of me, his small hands clenched gently at his sides, eyes focused and unblinking. Around us, The room had gone completely still. Conversations had stopped. The rappers and laughter, the buzz of new electronics, the sound of Zara's heels clicking through the kitchen, all of it had gone quiet. He had said it so simply, "I saved up to give this to Mom. She deserves it more than anyone." There was no drama in his voice, no bitterness, no performance, just truth, pure, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. I didn't open the envelope right away. My hands were shaking. My throat was tight. I looked up at him, searching for something in his face, some clue to how he'd learned to love this deeply, to think of someone else first, when all he'd been given was so little. He didn't look away. He didn't shift nervously or glance around for approval. He just waited, like he wasn't doing something extraordinary. Like this was just what you did when you love someone more than anything else. "Micah," I said, barely above a whisper. "What is this?" He shrugged, still calm. "I've been saving my lunch money. I told Mr. Carter at school I didn't want snacks during recess anymore. And Grandma gave me birthday money. I kept it in my book drawer." I was stunned, not by how much he gave. I hadn't even opened the envelope yet, but by how long he must have been planning this. How many little moments had gone unnoticed. The times he said he wasn't hungry. The afternoons he told me he already ate. The way he always said he didn't need anything when I asked. He wasn't just giving me money. He was giving me all the times he had quietly gone without. I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of lined notebook paper and a small stack of crumpled bills. Ones, fives, a 10, counted $27 total, but it felt like a fortune. I unfolded the note in thick blue marker. He had written for Mom, because she gives me everything, even when she has nothing. "Love, Micah." I broke right there in front of everyone. I cried. Not the soft, pretty kind of crying people do in movies. This was real, messy, yet deep. I held the note to my chest, my shoulders shaking as I tried to breathe through the weight of it, of everything. No one spoke. Not Zara, not her kids, not my mom or uncle, or any of the people who just moments ago had looked at us like we were something to pity. Micah sat down beside me again. He didn't try to wipe my tears. He didn't tell me not to cry. He just placed his small hand over mine and rested his head against my arm like he had done it 100 times before. And in that moment, I wasn't ashamed anymore. I wasn't the poor sister. I wasn't the single mom who brought a pair of dollar store socks to a party full of tech gadgets and gift cards. I was his mother. I was the woman he believed in. That envelope wasn't just a gift. It was a declaration, a quiet, powerful stand against everything we were supposed to feel embarrassed about. He'd seen the way they looked at us, heard the things they whispered when they thought he wasn't paying attention. And still, he had chosen to give, not just money, but love, pride, dignity. And that's what changed everything. Because in that moment, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of reflection, full of discomfort, full of the things people don't like to face about themselves. Zara didn't say a word. For the first time in years, she was speechless. Her eyes darted away when I finally looked at her, and she turned toward the kitchen, her smile gone, her posture stiff. Micah didn't need to win anyone over. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was just being exactly who he was. And that was more powerful than any expensive gift under that tree. I sat there holding Micah's note like it was the most precious thing I had ever owned. Around me, the room was still quiet, but it wasn't the awkward silence from before. It was a stillness that felt like reverence. People didn't know what to do with the weight of what they had just witnessed. I could feel the shift in the air. It was like someone had peeled back a layer of noise and shown everyone what really mattered. Micah, my 10-year-old boy, had done that, not with anger or dramatic words, but with something far more powerful, quiet, selfless love. I looked down at him, sitting beside me. His head was tilted slightly, still resting on my arm. His eyes were closed, not because he was tired, but because he was at peace. He had given everything he could give, and he was content. "Micah," I whispered, brushing a curl from his forehead. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he replied, eyes opening just enough to meet mine. "You always give to me." I wanted to give back. I wanted to say more, but I couldn't. My throat was too tight. My heart was too full. I looked up and saw Zara across the room holding a champagne glass that she wasn't drinking from anymore. Her expression was unreadable. There was no more smugness, no trace of the usual knowing smile. She was just still watching, maybe thinking about something. For the first time in a long time, Mother cleared her throat softly. "Micah," she said, her voice a little unsteady. "That was very generous of you, sweetheart." He smiled politely and nodded. He didn't bask in the praise. He didn't need to. Then something happened that I'll never forget. Zara's daughter, Leia, 12, always glued to a screen, set down her new phone and walked across the room. She knelt beside Micah, her fancy sweater brushing against the wrapping paper still scattered across the floor. "That was really cool," she said. Micah blinked. "Thanks. I don't think I've ever done anything like that," she added, looking down at the envelope in my hand. "Maybe I should." It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to let me know something had landed. Something had cracked through the surface of all the noise and shine and perfection. One by one, a few of the adults tried to return to their conversations, but there was a difference in the way they looked at us. Now, the judgment had faded, the pity too. What remained was something quieter, something more like respect. Even my uncle, who rarely showed emotion, came over and placed a hand on Micah's shoulder. "You've got a good heart, kid," he said. "Takes a strong person to give like that." Micah just nodded again, his cheeks turning a little red. Zara didn't say anything, not then, but later, when most of the guests were in the dining room and I was folding up wrapping paper, she came over. She stood next to me for a moment, not looking directly at me. Then softly, she said, "I didn't mean it the way it sounded." I looked up. "Didn't mean what?" "The comment about the sock." She paused. "It was a joke, but it wasn't a kind one." I didn't say anything, not right away. I wasn't sure what to say. "I guess I forget sometimes that not everyone lives the way I do," she continued, her voice quieter. "And your son, he reminded me what giving actually looks like." There was sincerity in her voice, but I didn't need an apology. That moment had already passed. What mattered now was what came after. "He's a good kid," I said simply. "He sees more than most people think." She nodded slowly, then turned back toward the kitchen. We left shortly after that, thanked our mom, hugged my uncle, helped Micah put on his oversized jacket. As we stepped outside into the cold, I looked down at the envelope again. The paper was soft and warm in my coat pocket, like it was carrying more than money. It was carrying proof. Proof that love, when rooted in sacrifice and sincerity, can shake even the most unshakable people. On the bus ride home, Micah leaned his head against the window and hummed softly to himself. I reached over, held his hand in mine, and sat in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because for the first time in a long time, everything had already been said. The bus hummed along as the city passed by in streaks of gray and gold. Outside the window, Christmas lights blinked from apartment balconies and street corners, some flashing wildly, others softly glowing against the dark. I sat beside Micah, our hands still linked, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt still. He didn't talk much on the ride home. He didn't need to. He'd already said more in one moment with one envelope than most people say with 100 words. I watched his reflection in the window, quiet, thoughtful, content, and I realized something I hadn't seen clearly before. He wasn't just growing up. He was becoming someone I deeply admired. When we got home, the apartment felt colder than I remembered, but it was ours. The little tree we'd put up in the corner twinkled with mismatched lights and construction paper ornaments he had made in school. I turned on the space heater and lit a cinnamon candle we'd been saving for the holiday. Micah went to his room, kicked off his shoes, and pulled a blanket over his shoulders. He looked more like a little boy again, tucked into the couch with his favorite book in his lap. I poured us both mugs of hot cocoa and sat beside him. You did something really brave today, I said quietly. He shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. I just wanted to give you something. You gave me more than a gift, Micah, I said, brushing his hair back. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. What's that? He asked. Hope, strength. You reminded me that I'm doing okay, even when it's hard, even when people try to make us feel small. He looked down at his mug, then smiled. You are doing okay, Mom. You always have. I thought about that moment in Zara's living room, how people had stared at us with pity, with surprise, with something like shame, and how it had all been wiped clean by the quiet truth of what Micah had done. The gift he gave wasn't about the money. $27 could barely buy a movie ticket and a snack. What made it priceless was the thought. the sacrifice, and the love behind it. Every dollar had a story. Every one of those crumpled bills represented a skipped snack, a passed-up toy, a moment of restraint from a 10-year-old who knew he wanted to do something meaningful for someone else. He reminded me that love isn't measured in wrapping paper or price tags. It's measured in the things we give up for each other, the small, daily choices to put someone else first. Later that night, I pulled out his note again and taped it to the wall above our couch, right between his Best Smile award and his perfect attendance ribbon. It didn't matter that it wasn't an official certificate. That piece of paper held more truth than anything an adult had handed him all year. In the weeks that followed, things shifted subtly in our family. Zara didn't say much, but she started texting a little more. Small things, checking in, asking if Micah needed school supplies, offering to drive us to doctor appointments when the buses ran late. She didn't mention the sock. She didn't mention the envelope. But I think about that moment every time she offers something with a little more warmth than before. Micah and I went back to our routine, diner shifts, homework, cartoons in the evening. But something in me had changed. I stopped feeling ashamed. I stopped seeing what we didn't have and started seeing what we did. A home, a bond, a boy with a heart strong enough to silence a room full of people who thought they had it all. And if you're watching this, if you've ever felt like your best isn't enough, I want you to remember this. Love doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need a bow or a receipt. Sometimes it comes in the form of a small envelope and a few wrinkled dollars. And it's more than enough, because that Christmas, my son didn't just give me a gift. He gave me back my dignity. He gave me the kind of love that can't be unwrapped, only lived. And no one in that room, not even my sister, could speak because deep down, they knew it too. If this story touched you in any way, if it reminded you of someone you love or of something you've been through, I hope you'll take a moment to let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories matter just as much as mine. If you believe the world needs more reminders that love and kindness are louder than judgment, share this video with someone who needs it today. It might be a friend, a parent, a sister, maybe even yourself. And if you want more real stories like this, raw, honest, and straight from the heart, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss one. From my little corner of the world to yours, thank you for being here. Until next time, hold your people close and don't let anyone make you feel small for loving.